Welcome back to the Pre-Vetted podcast, where we spotlight extraordinary people and remarkable talent reshaping our world. Our guest today is Swati Swoboda. She's a development manager for Vault in Shopify's Office of the CEO, where she partners with leadership to metaprogram how the company operates. Before that, Swati led the shipping platform and earlier the foreign exchange multi-currency teams owning complex, high-impact surfaces of global commerce. She is also known for a builder's mindset, building tools to get things done, and for sharing pragmatic takes on engineering culture, code reviews, and leading through tough seasons. Swati, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I did not know I gave you that intro. I was like, oh, that's cool to hear.
We can talk a little bit about the intro because I try to put a lot of effort on the intro because as a doer, I do stuff, but sometimes I do stuff and I don't know the names of the things that I'm doing, if that makes sense, right? And then when I realize I connect the dots of, what I'm doing has a name and has a following, and it's like, oh, I arrived to the same conclusions that a lot of group of people, right? And having those shared experiences becomes important, right? So for me, the intro is a great way to connect and share what you're doing with the audience, right?
It's amazing. That's cool.
Awesome. So Swati, tell us about your origin story. What first pulled you into software?
Gosh, I was about 11 or 12 years old, whatever you were in 8th grade. I had to do a paper on Bolivia. I was at the library. There was only 3 books or references in the encyclopedia or the encyclopedias about Bolivia. So I went to my dad, who was using the computer at the library, and I told him, Dad, we need to go to a different library because there's no more books on Bolivia at this library. And then he tells me, sit on the computer next to me. Back then, the computer time was timed. I think it still is at the libraries. So we had an hour, and he's like, just use the computer to find information about Bolivia. And I was very confused initially because back then you just get a web page and I remember it was a blue background. You just click around, you try to figure out what to do. It's like the library's own page, if you will. And I was very confused. And then he points me at click on that thing at the top, where you enter the URL and type in yahoo.com. And I did that. I'm like, well, okay, now what? And he's like, well, type in the search bar what you're looking for. And I did that. And then search results came back. And I was like, whoa, how is this working? Is when I type in Bolivia, is someone quickly pulling up resources or something and returning results to me? What is going on here? And I wanted to know how that worked. And that's how I was just curious on how the hell did someone build this?
Amazing. Yeah, we get used to those things, right? We get used to, now we type everything and we can find all the information of everything everywhere, right?
Yeah.
But at that time, before search engine, right, we couldn't imagine all of the development that happened after that, right?
Yeah, back then, there used to be a section in Yahoo where you could see the new websites they have added. This was pre-Google. Google didn't exist. Back then it was Yahoo and Excite came out, and Ask Jeeves was all the rage for a little bit, which is now basically AI, and that's a lot of fun. And then you used to have search engine aggregators where you'd search all the search engines because they'd all give you different results. So I'm very old.
Experience. Yeah, I feel the same. Every time I see my white hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I didn't realize this is experience. So
it is. And that's how I kind of got curious. And then for web design or programming, web apps itself, it actually was Basecamp. Back then, Basecamp, or 37 Signals, I forgot what they called themselves back then, was a web design agency. And they had put out a page, I guess, or a demo or something of how I think FedEx's website could look. they had come from it like a very product and UX lens and how small things would have made the page so much better. And that's when I realized how much power, if you will, or how much impact an engineer can have in how people experience things and how much tooling and how it surfaces itself can really change how our day sometimes goes. Because I've certainly tried even today to buy a shipping label from various websites and so forth. It's like a painful exercise. And it's like, wow, like we could put more energy into this to make it better, to make it less pain collectively in the universe. And that is almost a responsibility that we have as engineers to do.
Yes, we are on top of giants' shoulders, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's so much that they build that allow us now to do so much more.
So much more, yeah. We're on top of giant shoulders, but there's also so many small tools that we use everywhere, and each of them can be better, and that's all made by an engineer somewhere.
Right. For me, the ultimate goal of the engineer, I mean, this is more on the philosophical side, but it's about making something that people will use. What's the point of building a bridge or whatever tool if nobody's going to use it?
Yes, absolutely. Making something
Yeah.
useful.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, at first, my first stage has been building something that it's beautiful on the efficiency, on effectiveness. How fast can I build something that uses as least resources as possible? But then I evolved towards impact to the people, right? Where you can sacrifice efficiency in order to help people. I think it's a worthwhile pursuit,
Endeavor.
right?
Agreed. Yeah.
And that's kind of the idea of Rails, right? Where it's not the most efficient language on resource, but it allows you to build something where you can do so much more innovation and impact to the users, right?
Yeah, I'm not even sure efficiency argument's the right one. I mean, Shopify runs on Rails. That's a lot
Right.
on there, so I don't buy that argument. I do find that Rails fits my brain a lot better. It wasn't always this way. I didn't fall in love with Rails right away. I fought
Really?
Rails probably. I didn't learn Rails until I joined Shopify. Before that, I was primarily in C#. And I realized up until then, the thing that I loved was not like a language or a framework. I just loved my editor a lot. Say, for example, C# came with Visual Studio Professional. This is before VS Code was a thing. And that's a pretty freaking amazing editor because it made up for all the flaws in the language. Now, switching to Rails was a big challenge for me because I didn't have an editor and I was like, I don't know how to do anything anymore. And then I realized that I didn't need an editor to use a language. Rails is something I feel like I can use in anything. I can use it apparently with Cloud. You can use it in console now, and I can use it in Notepad. And I think it's like Rails itself is powerful. It makes things so easy that I don't need it to be I don't need it to be supported by an insanely powerful editor, which makes up for all of its gaps. Because Rails just works in my head.
The autocomplete features, all of those are great, but it's a way to...
It's a crutch, yeah. It's, I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen PHP for a long time, but at least 15, 20 years ago, PHP had like 3 different styles of naming a method. It could be either all caps, it could be snake case, it could be camel case. There was no convention, if you will. You couldn't predict anything. You always had to reference docs or rely on autocomplete. With Rails, I find is like, oh, I type something. I was like, it might exist. It probably does. And it's like, oh, it does. Amazing. And that's great that way. And I don't have to spend as many cycles memorizing things because it just, it's very natural, if you will.
Yes. It's one of the things the way that I describe myself is I'm a Ruby on Rails developer. I love Ruby on Rails, but I use JavaScript because, some projects require it, right?
Yeah.
Or the customer require it, or, it's outside of my control. So I kind of deal with it. But I mean, if I have to choose, I choose Ruby. I love the Ruby language, right?
Me too.
There is this idea of enjoying the process of writing the code, right? Which I find very appealing. Yeah, and then when you are able to describe a problem and a domain knowledge that happens in real life, you can describe it in such an elegant way that I just enjoy that.
Yeah, and for me, in addition to writing, it's also reading, especially with AI now, as I definitely read a lot more code than I now write more code. And I find Rails to be quite enjoyable to read. Especially when it's well written, like it's prose, it's poetry, and it's like, oh, like this is nice. You're reading a novel and not something that feels like burdensome. So I mean, at Razor's Edge, it's easier to use Rails in the age of AI because it's so much easier to read than other languages that I have come across because it's usually more compact. Something I would do in Ruby on Rails is a lot smaller in like actual size than say C# or Java or JavaScript or any other language really. It's just I feel like I'm often reading a lot more syntactic sugar versus like the actual
Right.
logic. Whereas Rails, I feel like I'm just reading like logic.
And when you can start removing symbols and syntax and you can just make it so descriptive, it's so beautiful to see. Yeah.
Exactly.
I would spend one of my sins that I would spend a lot more time than I should on just naming variables with my team because it's like I want to make it. I want to find the right word for the right, context and the right. Yeah, and sometimes there are nuances on the language that allows you to just one word might not be quite exact fit, but you can find other words that are describe better what you're trying to do and they're more compact. The elegance of that, it's something that I enjoy very much. I used to, my first coding language was ASP before
Mine
.NET.
too. Classic ASP. That was my first one. Response.write everywhere. My gosh, I have barely met anybody else who did Classic ASP first.
I mean, I like it because it was my first experience. It was my first start learn code with that.
Yeah.
But it was kind of PHP, It
Yes.
was inline everything
Yes.
and it,
No
it, it would get
protection.
messy so quickly.
Yep, I learned from Classic ASP. It taught me SQL injection. It taught me man-in-the-middle attacks. It taught me what happens when you don't sanitize things. It was amazing. Like I learned so much from Classic ASP because everything that bad that could happen happened, and it was amazing.
Yes.
Back then, like I think front page back then or Notepad. Well, I don't think I used front page for a while and then moved to Notepad plus plus eventually. And Dreamweaver as well and FTPing your files and had no control or no revision control. Those were wild days.
One change and everything could blow up, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
everything was tested on prod. I mean, this is amazing. We have come a long way. I don't think people realize how far we've come in engineering sometimes.
Yeah, and with the notepad editing the production file while refreshing on the other side to
Yep.
make it work. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
I've done
Yep.
that.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, and yeah, SQL injection was probably the best one. Someone deleted all the records from my database by just ending and did the delete all is great. So that was fun. Yeah.
So my natural thing was from ASP to eventually, well, actually it was a long thing, but I went from ASP to work at Microsoft. So there was that. And I was the Microsoft boy. I launched .NET back then, the first
Nice.
.NET and SharePoint and all that stuff and Office. But eventually I moved to PHP because I thought, well, ASP, PHP, it's kind of the same thing, right? And I found that ASP was so much cleaner, so much better than PHP. PHP is a mess
Yeah,
compared
but
to
it was
that, right?
free. Classic ASP was hard to work on. The servers were more expensive. Hosting was expensive. PHP, you could everything was so much cheaper
Cheaper, yeah.
to get. And there was such a big ecosystem and community around it. But then I think eventually everybody just moved to Python because that was a bit of more sanity, more sane than both PHP and affordable compared to Classic ASP or .NET to use.
Right. And you have a bug and you get dragged into so much code and pages that was so hard to follow. I realized I have to there has to be something better, right? That's how I came up with Ruby on Rails, right? That's how I found about Ruby and switched immediately to Ruby.
Wow,
Yeah.
it's an immediate switch for you. I think it was. I I usually adopted the languages of the companies that I was at, and for a while I was a BlackBerry, so I was Java for a long time, and then I switched to a .NET shop, so I adopted .NET, and then I decided to go to another .NET shop, and I followed Ruby on Rails, but I didn't really pay much attention to it at all until I came to Shopify, and I had to even learn like who all the people are in the community because I was so deep into .NET, and I loved it. I loved everything about C# and using the .NET framework. I really did.
Right, right. C# is compiled, right? So you have to compile it in order to
Yes.
use it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it loves its design patterns. C# is loves all of its design patterns, and it loves files. It's very different than Rails. Very, very different.
Right, right. Yeah, because of my career of always interpreted languages, for me was an easier thing to accept. Actually, I have trouble compiling code, right?
Yeah, I can't
Because,
compile code anymore. It's torture
right,
now. Like I tried writing C# maybe a year or two ago, and I just could not. I was like, this is way too painful. Why would anyone do this to themselves? So, yeah.
right, right. Yes, I think Ruby is a one-way street. Once you get in, you're hooked for life.
Yeah, turns out, yeah. And here we are.
Yes, yes. So you're talking about metaprogramming, Shopify, right? What does
Yes.
that actually mean?
So this happened a couple of 3 years ago. So I was working happily away in the shipping team at Shopify, and I had the opportunity to come work to metaprogram Shopify. I was like, I don't even know what that means. Like, what does it mean to metaprogram a company? And my understanding is, it's like I work on the tooling that decides how the company works. So, for example, I work on the Vault team, which houses our project management system. So we have our own bespoke project management system, and project management is probably not the right word for it because it's not project management as much as project alignment system. So to give you context, at any given time, we have about 1,000 projects running in this company, and all of them sit in the vault. And every 4 weeks, Toby reviews them, like all of them, over
Wow.
a period of 2-3 days. Well, I guess he alternates, so I guess he reviews every half of them every 4 weeks, and he uses the system to build that because it contains alignment. This is a founder-led company, and if whatever you've heard about founder mode happens here. So what that means is Toby's in the details, and every leader is expected to be in the details. And while we, as engineers, we have a lot of agency and autonomy, we earn that by aligning in Vault through GST system. So, for example, if I want to work on a project, I don't know, it's going to launch Sidekick or launch multiple currencies on Shopify, I'd make a project. It would be approved by a senior leader on the Vault. There would be like a receipt, if you will, and then as you move through the phases of prototype, build, release, you'd have a review every single time. What that does is it lets you transfer accountability to the senior leader. So it's like, okay, like I got a review, it's been approved. It lets someone else it lets someone else confirm the risk of a project, which gives you in turn more autonomy because you're like, okay, like I aligned with this project. We're not a company where like, okay, Toby goes, like somebody launch currencies or make us global or something, and I decide to do this project and he never comes pays attention to it. Because all of this ends up mattering. He's an engineer at heart, in my opinion. And decisions that an engineer makes can limit us in the future because something could have been built in a way that does not fit into a vision or does not allow us to pivot when something like COVID happens or something like AI comes in the world. And being in the details allows you to make decisions faster and better decisions. And something like GSC facilitates that. And that's just one part of the Vault, which impacts how the company runs because everybody is effectively forced to put all their projects in there and get alignment in there because, well, the CEO reviews them, and that controls that part of like how do we work culture in there, right? But then Vault also houses like our intranet. It houses like our Shopify TV where we watch live streams and things like that. It houses a whole bunch of other fun tools and so forth. Is a part because we're a remote company. Remember, we have offices, or we call them ports. People can come in and work in like 4 or 5 cities, or maybe 5 or 6 cities, but it's a fully remote first company.
Right.
And so our office ends up being something like the Vault. And it's like, how do we keep sustaining that? Because there's so many companies that have RTOs and so forth. How do we create a culture which works for the company and the people? So that's what Metaprogramming at Shopify for me is like, okay, building the tooling to run a company the way that the founder wants it to run.
Right, right. And it comes to what I was talking about, being obsessed on efficiency, right? Because if Toby is meticulous on the details, then he can make the company much more efficient and align the effort of everybody towards the same goals, right?
Correct. Yes. It's how he can set culture. It's like, this is
Right.
how I would like the company to work. A quote that he often repeated to me in the beginning, it's like, we're building for not the company that we have, but the company that we want, which is a way for me. It's like, okay, this is a tool that we can use to actually change culture. Sometimes it's a bit slower to do it this way, but it is impactful because, hey, the company is nudging you to go in this direction, adding friction to this, but it's removing friction from here, which can over time change culture.
Right. Right. I mean, when you see the values of the company, right, written on the wall, or, remote first company doesn't have a wall, but you get the idea,
No.
right?
But they have a vault. So they don't have a
But
wall, but they have a vault.
they have
So
vault, yeah. So you know, if they're written on the wall, but nobody reads them, nobody lives them every day, then they're kind of lost. It
yes.
doesn't make any sense. But the best way to change the company culture is by the values, which are, the north of the culture, if you like. It's how you live every day. And when you have to make a decision, you look at the values, and then you can say, okay, based on these values, does those values help me make the right decision, right? It should provide you clarification, right? A clarity. So I can see how focusing on meta-programming the company, the impact that you could have on the company culture, it's huge, right?
Yeah, the company culture, work we get done, how we get done. It's really important. We care deeply about commerce. We care about our merchants, and we don't like losing trust with them. And a way to lose trust with merchants is then someone launches something, and then it turns out that leadership was not aligned with it. And that's a kind of a thing that we try hard to avoid, because at the end of the day, that impacts merchants because something went in front of them and it caused a lot of havoc and now has to be rolled back. And it turns out that our leadership had context which they would have known it wouldn't work, or they didn't want it, or so forth, or whatever, right? So that is the kind of thing that we aim to do. Like, it is a way on how we maintain trust with the roadmap.
Right, right. And I was earlier talking about my experience at Microsoft, and one of the things I learned there is that they had different teams doing different things, but isolated within each other. So there were so many overlapped efforts that they built in an acronym data search engine, because sometimes you have the same acronyms used for two different things.
Crazy.
Yeah, and I could see like they would build a lot of effort building one tool, and then it was replaced by another tool because it has a 50% overlap or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So much wasted effort.
Wasted effort, and also morale for engineer. People who love building want to build and not waste time. Like, I don't think anyone actually wants to waste time. We all want to work on, in my opinion, meaningful things that can provide fulfillment. So to work on things that canceled or turns out, oh, another team is doing the same exact thing that I'm doing, and to find that out late, that's so demoralizing and demotivating. And that's one thing. Like, that's one thing that's really nice about the vault. Anyone can go look, and you can go just look at all the projects that the company's working on. They're
Right.
all there, and they're updated, and you can go contact the people. You can go find the Slack channel where they're all hanging out or whatever, and see all the updates for that project, all the resources, everything.
Right. And that provides transparency within the organization
Yeah.
and allows everybody to align towards the same goal,
Yep.
right? Yeah. And then the other part is the bureaucracy, right? Which again was a big issue on Microsoft. I could see a lot of bureaucracy. And when you have a founder-led company, Toby can work on optimizing the bureaucracy to reduce it as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the GST system itself is bureaucracy because at its core, it requires you to get sign off and reviews from leadership. So I don't think that in a company you can get rid of bureaucracy, but you can change the kind of bureaucracy it is, the effort it requires, and the impact it has. Like, sometimes people are like, well, wouldn't it be better if we had no GST system? Like, well, that's that's not a reality that the world lives in. You need something where things are aligned on. It's not the question of that we replace it with nothing. It's never going to happen. You have to replace it with something. So my opinion is that GSD is the least bureaucratic system that you could have, and it provides efficiency in the gains, which is amazing.
Yes, yes. I mean, the issue that I see with bureaucracy is when it's impeding innovation, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it's in the way of operating, right?
Exactly.
But by building a system that allows you to automate and optimize that, then you can reduce it. But you also, as you said, you need the bureaucracy, but not the bureaucracy per se. What you need is accountability and tracking to
Yeah,
know what's going on, right?
exactly. Yeah, I think the thing that we strive to avoid, there's a difference between efficiency and waste. Sometimes we have to be inefficient. Sometimes, especially for when you're trying to innovate into new areas, you don't know what you're doing. You're going to be a little bit inefficient. But what we don't want is waste. Waste is where we learn nothing from it, where we spend a ton of time, resources working on something that we know to be utterly useless. And that's what I think the system avoids. But it doesn't, but efficiency, that comes, I think, over time.
Right. Right. Well, it's not about optimizing time, it's about optimizing innovation, right? So even if somebody builds something that it's not going to be used, but they learn something from it, then that becomes useful. The learning becomes
Yes.
useful,
It's the
right?
learnings that we intend to capture. Correct. Yeah.
Right. Right. And that in order to do that, the trade-off is you cannot optimize on time. You can optimize on So I'll digress a little bit with this, but I'll tell you a story. I have my son, 10-year-old, and he wanted a toy, and he was bargaining with me about, I have this money, and can you put up the rest? We were doing that, and then I said, okay, I don't remember how much money was, but it's not the point. But I said, okay, I will buy you the toy, but for this investment, you're going to pay it back on piano lessons, right? And then he did the math very quickly. He's like, but you're losing money. It's cheaper for you to buy me the toy than pay for the piano lessons. And I was like, yes, but I'm optimizing on your learning, not on money spent.
Mm.
He thought it for a second.
ROI.
He was like, yeah. He was like, okay, that makes sense. Move on, right? It's the same thing here, right? Choose where you want to optimize, and then everything else is a trade-off, right? You're going to be less optimal on that. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, I got involved in learn a little bit about business process management notation, which is a mouthful, but basically it's about building workflows for businesses, right? So, if you have a pizza parlor, right, delivering pizzas, right, like the coordination of the cheese, the guy that is grinding the cheese, the guy that is, managing the oven, and the guy that is delivering the pizza, right? So all that can become a very complex workflow with messages within, which allows you to optimize how that works, right? And when you're talking about metaprogramming and Vault, I am thinking you're doing something similar with a different philosophy, right?
Yeah, this is, I think, yeah, it's very similar. Like Vault to me is it's like a map, but it's also how it's how I'd imagine that the dispatching or truck dispatcher works. Like when you've got a whole bunch of trucks on the road, you want to know their position and you want to know ETA and all that, but you're not actually driving for them. You just want to know where they're going. That's what you have GPS. So it's like a bit of a it's called like the thing Toby calls like a bird watching tool, and it's to me it's the GPS in the truck. That's what it is. It sends signal back to like, hey, here's where I am. Here's where I am going, presumably, or and then sometimes you can report back. It's like, oh, there's an accident on this road. Hey, everybody, we should probably reroute all the trucks that are behind me to avoid this road and I'll seek an alternate route. It helps the overall company move goods faster from point A to point B. And that's what a lot of engineering is, right? Often just going from point A to point B. Well, sometimes we're doing exploration, but that's what this is. It's about bringing transparency so that we can observe and birdwatch and how the projects and work is moving at a tech company at scale.
Right, right. And how do you balance out not micromanaging versus providing autonomy to run different projects?
It depends what you define micromanaging as here. If you describe micromanaging, it's like that I am going to let Swati make all the decisions about how she's going to build a tool to run the company. That's probably not okay, but there is my responsibility often, say, just working with the founder often is like, hey, like I'm going to build how we do our internal wiki. This is how I'm thinking about it. And for example, our wiki is, our wiki's data is stored in GitHub. Like that's where all the pages are. And then we surface it on the vault. And there's multiple ways you can do it. You could sync, just download from GitHub and then just surface it and render it on the vault. As Toby proposed in this case, it's like, why don't you just just cache it? Use proxy. Do not sync anything. It's like syncing is like the worst thing ever. Then you're constantly stuck in sync nightmares. And is that micromanaging? Like, I don't think so. From my perspective, he's allowed to give a say on like how he wants his engineering to spend time. And he may have a broader vision that I just don't know about. And he has been doing it for 20 years. So he can say, like, we've tried that. It did not work. And things like that. Our leadership is allowed to provide input. And if that's micromanaging, then Shopify is a very heavy micromanaging company. It's a very top-down company. And we're unapologetic about it. Completely unapologetic. But if micromanaging, which I have experienced in other places, is like, hey, what did you get done today? How many hours did you work this week? To me, that's micromanaging. Like filling out freaking timesheets is micromanaging to me, even if the goal is to get government credits or whatever. And that is something I think that Shopify does not do at all. I've never had to fill out a timesheet here. How I manage my time and having autonomy over that is what I have here. I have high agency, but I've had to earn the trust to have high agency. You earn agency through output. Like you have to earn it. It's not free. You don't start with like, here, we've hired you to do X. Now I'm going to leave you alone and you go do it. No, I've hired you to constantly align with what we're doing. And it is my job to report back. It's like, hey, going to work on X. Here's how we're approaching. And feel free to give a veto if you disagree with it. But normally it's just like me providing updates. It's like, here's how it's going. Here's what's working well, and providing you with details, and not taking it like in an offensive way. If someone asks, well, give me more details on how you're doing it, because often different people in the company have different contexts, and they can clear the fog, if you will, if they know what's going on. Then we can all work on it together. So to me, it's extremely collaborative, and it's not just collaborative with your peers; it's collaborative with the entire leadership chain.
Right. Well, I think that having an opinionated leader, right, as you're describing, Toby, I don't think that would be micromanagement per se, right? I think that's a great way to get, provide feedback to the rest of the company, right? Because being able to say how things should be done based on his experience and explain the whys gives you a lot of learning experience, right?
It does, yes.
So I think that's great, right? But yeah, I agree that when somebody doesn't tell you the whys and is like, do it because I said so, just because, and then you don't understand the whys, then that could become a micromanagement thing, right?
Well, it depends. It depends on whose responsibility you think it is to uncover the why. So when I joined the team, Duncan Davidson onboarded me, and he said, there are times that I'm going to disagree with what I've been asked to do. And I have a couple of options there. I could either be like, nope, Toby's wrong, and I'm not going to do it. Don't recommend that one. The other one is, what context do I have that I am not being explicit about that he does not have?
Right.
Then the flip side of that, what context does he have that I just don't know? So I find that often when it comes to disagreements, it's not that we disagree because someone's a better engineer or something. It's because we think that the other person has context or knowledge that they just don't. So it's often about uncovering context. Now, with busy guy, Toby, CEO, founder, I'm not always able to ask him. It's like, why? Because there's only so much time. So sometimes it's like, okay, he thinks this way. And then it's always like working back, like what are the set of things that could lead him to that conclusion? And how can I get more information about it? So that's what it's often like a lot of digging. It's not, I wouldn't call it wasting time. And sometimes I can ask and that's fine. But oftentimes it's like, what is the context that I'm missing? And if I'm not missing anything, it's like, oh, like, hey, no, Toby, like you're wrong because you're missing this context and or not, so it's a lot about like uncovering what our set of assumptions, sort of knowledge the same and bringing them to light. And then I often find that when they are brought to light, that's when we get to the fun part. Then we can brainstorm and be like, okay, then it becomes like about which trade-off do you want? Because neither decision's perfect. But it's really not my decision to decide what trade-offs he wants with the company. It's like, hey, if we do it, we piss off this set of people. And if you do this way, we piss off this people. Which way do you want to do it? And who do you want to piss off? Because you're the one who's going to have to put your name on it. Not me, really. So that I think that's the fun part to put, I think, or align with in front of any leadership, the trade-offs, once the context is known.
Right, right. And the whole thing is trade-offs. And sometimes you have to make decisions without the complete information, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes you make the wrong decision. There's things we've tried. It's like, hey, we don't know which way this is going to go. Like, this is deep into human psychology now, and we're just going to have to try it. And so that's where it's like shipping fast is a big one, and being able to align with them quickly helps a lot. It's like we just have to ship and find out, and there are risks, but we're not going to know until we actually ship.
Right, right. Interesting. So you also mentioned that you were reading more code than you're actually writing. I'm assuming that's in the context of code reviews, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, also Claude though. We use AI a
Claude,
lot
right.
in the company. It's one of the early adopters of everything, I think, and Toby's infamous memo. But we use Claude agents, everything, and that leads to a lot of PRs. My team is tiny, but it's not. It's like 8 people, but it's not unusual to have like 100 PRs in one day, which is nuts. So you're reading a lot more, reading a lot faster as well. And you have to be able to fit the system in your head and being able to understand how everything interplays. So I'm definitely reading a lot more and writing very rarely in Rails.
Right. I have this idea of that AI coding. Basically, it's good, but needs a north, needs a guidance, right? You describing you as a programmer, describing the problem and the architecture and how you want it to solve, and then the AI is great at just the grunt, right? What do you think about that?
I mean, I wouldn't even call it grunt at this point. It can do pretty remarkable things. But I agree that the skills that are shining right now are the folks where they have paid attention to their communication skills, being able to express a problem and understand why we are doing something, understanding the business use case, if you will, so that
Right.
they can make better decisions. Because you can just get to a tech doc a lot faster now. I can go point Claude at a code base. It's like, hey, I'm thinking of building an achievement system in the vault, for example. Here's the vibes. Here's the vibes that I'm going for. Tell me on what this could look like. And then having back and forth with it is like, okay, no, that doesn't make sense. I don't want that. Or, yep, that makes sense. Tell me more about this, and so forth. And then you get to a tech design, and then you're like, okay, I put it in front of the team and so forth. It's like, okay, what do folks think? Yep, let's go. And then you can point to Claude, okay, now implement this step by step. So it's a lot. It is a lot of prompting, yes, but it's a lot into like how you're able to again share context with something. How are you able to tell why now, not just receiving from someone else, like why someone's doing something. It's like now how are you able to tell somebody else why you're doing something, the outcomes that I want, and then do it with an engineering mindset, because that's what you're doing to Claude. So every engineer has become a manager effectively, where they are understanding a business use case and then telling it to a bunch of agents.
Right. Yeah, probably grunt was a poor word choice, because I've seen more and more. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a poor choice. It's just I think definitely in 2025, you went through a phase. It's like, what do you mean that AI does not, that don't get to do the fun part of my job anymore, which is writing code. Because that's what I really enjoy. And then I was like depressed for a while. I was like, oh my gosh, if Claude can do everything. And now I'm just stuck typing prompts all the time. Like that does not sound like fun at all. Why did I
Right.
become an engineer? I became an engineer to write code. I actually enjoy writing code. But then when you're able to move past that and you're like being able to explain and have a person that you can always have a back and forth on like how to solve a problem is a lot of fun. And you're able to solve so many more problems, which is also a lot of fun. Like you can really increase the amount of impact that you have now.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's kind of the way I see it. Is instead of seeing AI as replacing developers, it assists developers on the lower complexity tasks, so we can focus on the higher complexity.
Yes, exactly. Like all of our work is we're just able to work on higher leverage things. If every engineer has become an engineering manager who's managing a team of 8 people, that's a lot more engineers in the world today. And we can solve so many more problems collectively. So often people say it's like, oh, we're going to need and have fewer engineers in the world next year or whatever. And a parallel that we often draw here, at least, is like, okay, well, let's look at accountants. When calculators came out or when Excel came out, do we have less accountants than ever before? And it's like, no. We have more accountants than ever before, but what is different is that we have more companies with accountants now. So from my perspective, we're going to have in engineering more companies with engineers, but every company will have fewer engineers, but we're collectively going to have more people working in this field.
Right. Right. I agree. I see the AI copilot agents, whatever we call them, but basically all of the tool sets that AI provides as a way to generate new jobs for engineers, product people, and managers. Right. This is going to actually improve the productivity of everybody and be able to do much more than before.
Yeah, and much harder problems. There are so many unsolved tools that exist for people, and all those can be brought to life now. It's like, okay, like we can do it, and then we can advance. To me, it's technological advancement. It's a great thing.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about ASP before, and I remember, and one syntax error, and the whole page would break, right?
Yeah.
And it wouldn't tell you exactly, which line was the error, just
No.
500 error, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I remember
It sucked.
scanning
Yeah.
to find that missing semicolon. So
Yes.
you're right. Like the argument for saying that AI leads to less jobs is like saying that having, I don't know, autocomplete or for an editor to tell you that you're missing a linter or a semicolon is missing on this line, it leads to less jobs. It doesn't. It leads to more jobs because more of us can do more things now.
Right. Right. And I've been talking with product owners that are vibe coding what they want to do, right? And they can show the users and they can show the developers, this is what we need, right?
Yes.
And I can validate it because now I can build a prototype. That code is not going to be production ready. An actual engineer has to rebuild it from scratch, but it's a great first step towards, you don't need necessarily a technical engineer. Now you can bridge the product owner and the software engineer. They're closer together than before, right?
Yeah. Everyone now has an AI model that understands them the way that they want to be understood. Like we all speak differently. And if there was remember that swing comic that there, like, this is what I wanted, this is what I got, and this is what they built and all that. Like I think that's become so much better now because a PM can, as you said, product owner or manager can talk to AI in their language or however they want to, and then come up with a prototype, and then an engineer can see it. It's put something visual in front of us so much faster. And an engineer also doesn't have to maybe spend as many cycles building something because now the PM can go validate it first. It's like, hey, I've got a rough
Right.
prototype. What do you think? And you could even, startups can launch so much faster because they can vibe code something. It's like, okay, let's try this out. And they don't have to put such a massive engineering power behind it. But when code does not have to be quote unquote production ready, they can scale as needed versus like everything has to start with like 20 engineers. I hope this leads to more startups and not less.
Right. Right. And that's what I've been realizing about using AI is now I don't have to spend hours fixing a semicolon. I can just tell the AI, fix it. I can tell the AI, this is the algorithm that I want you to implement. And now I don't have to like go over a lot of cycles just trying to put the basics. And then I can just steer the agent towards what I actually want to build.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing.
And furthermore, I think that we were talking about earlier about SQL injection. I learned about, I think it's 11 now. It's more the TCP/IP layers that I had to learn all that stuff, the low level things that we needed to learn before, because all of that is something that you needed in order to build something. I think that those core, knowledge are going to become much more relevant in the age of AI, right?
Yes, understanding the foundations, I think, becomes far more important.
Yes.
It's got to be a lot harder now to wing it because it comes to context. If you can't share the context with AI, it's only as smart as you in some ways. In some ways, not all the ways. It's definitely smarter than me, but you need to be able to guide it, and for that, you have to know the questions you're not asking.
Yes.
You have to know what it doesn't know, and it's like, no, I want you to build it this way. No, what about this? Like, because you have to be able to challenge it. Actually, let me rephrase that. Because it is smarter than you now have to work more to become smarter than it, so you can share context with it. You want it to be faster than you, but you still must
Right.
guide it.
Yes, it becomes a yes man in the sense that if
Yeah.
you go in the wrong direction, it's going to say, yes, let's figure out how to do that. And it's going to kind of figure it out or give you whatever you need because it's going to try to comply to your request. So that's what I'm trying to go. If your initial request is wrong because you have the wrong foundation or you don't have foundations, then everything after that is going to be
Yeah, like
bad effort.
yeah, like security. You can't do trade-offs well, right? And security is where it's really weak at. It's like it takes a bit of nudging to be like, no, that's a bad thing. Do not do that. That is how I get screwed. Like, do not do this. And that tends to require experience and so forth. And so far, maybe it'll change. I don't know. It's also advancing fast. Maybe they'll figure out how to make AI so that people are not pasting their API tokens in ChatGPT and then leaking everything, but it'll be prone to those human limitations.
Right. So looking ahead, what is the future that you see with AI and the world of software engineering?
Well, I mean, we talked about this a bit, like a lot more
Yes.
engineers, right? A lot more engineers and a lot more prompting for sure. Actually, I don't think I know that deeply either. I know that I hope or I know or I expect there'll be a lot more engineers with very different skill set. Or I think so far we have valued engineers who can apparently lead code. So given a very specific problem, very specified problem, can write extremely efficient algorithms for it. I think those have been replaced completely by AI because AI can write far more efficient algorithms a lot more faster for very specified problems. So for me, engineering has become more a mix of product and engineering. So product engineers who can take a business outcome and then craft a problem and then direct a bunch of agents to solve those problems. That's
Right.
where I see the future. And that's a very different skill set. But for those engineers who valued problem solving as a skill and communication, I think they will have a lot easier time.
Right. Amazing. Swati, we're running out of time, but I truly appreciated you being here today. I think we learned a lot. Any final remarks before we wrap it up?
No, it was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Swati, for
Yeah.
being here today.
Yeah. Take care.